Hi there. Welcome back to the Speak Your Piece podcast. My name is Ian McNaughton. Some people call me Big E. And this is part two of our 2026 NFL season preview. If you missed it, go take a look at our last episode last week, last Wednesday. You can watch that on our YouTube channel. You can listen to that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. You can check it out there. It was a good show where we discussed the biggest changes from 2025 to 2026. Today's episode, I'm going to be discussing the players and or teams and maybe a coach in the individuals that will define this season. Is what I'm calling this season preview, or the players who I think will be the most impactful or have the most impact on the season, along with their respective teams. I hope that kind of makes sense. I'm going to discuss at least seven guys for sure and their situations. I might throw in two others, three others that I'm like, they're not maybe like a top five or top seven, but like I am keeping an eye on them from a distance. We'll go with that. But that's gonna be our show today. And like I mentioned earlier, if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Uh, Subscribe to Spotify. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, where we get your podcast. You can find us there, and any support's greatly appreciated. Basically, we're doing all of our NFL season previews before the season starts on Wednesday, September 9th. So today's Wednesday, August 5th. So we got a little bit over a month left until the start of the season. One of those preview days is going to be a college football preview as well. So it's not, I guess, all NFL. I guess it's football previews, but it's mostly NFL is what we're doing here. I still need to do a little bit more research and a little bit more note taking, getting all my information set for the college football season, which should be really fun as well. So, with that being said, let's get into it. Who are the players or individuals, as well as their respective teams, that I think will define the 2026 NFL season? I don't know if this is all in order. I don't know if I believe that there is a list here, but definitely there's like a couple tiers. And I think the first three guys who I really wanted to discuss, or situations I really wanted to discuss, are the first three that I'll discuss here. So let's go in this top tier with Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. I chatted a little bit about the Bills last week. They have a new coach, they have a new receiver. Um, so there's some organizational change. They have a new stadium. You know, they're not going to be playing at the old Ralph Wilson. Now they're playing at New Highmark Stadium, which I don't know how long you are allowed to call your new stadium new insert stadium. You know what I mean? Like I feel like you get a year with that. Like you can't like this time next year we can't be calling it New Highmark Stadium because it's not new. It's been around for a year. Point is, Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills are arguably my number one player and teams that'll impact this season. And the reason I say that is Josh Allen is one of, if not the best quarterbacks in the league. And unfortunately, kind of with this list, when I was doing this list, I didn't want to talk all quarterbacks because obviously quarterbacks are extremely important. Quarterbacks play a big part in football, in the NFL. Um, you really aren't anything unless you have a good to great quarterback, and that's what makes Josh Allen so special. Is that not only is he a good slash great quarterback, he is a phenomenal quarterback. He's an exceptional quarterback, and he is still trying to get to his first Super Bowl with the Buffalo Bills. He is in a crowded AFC featuring the likes of the Kansas City Chiefs, the Baltimore Ravens, who have been his, let's say, historic rivals since he's been in the NFL. He's now got the new up and comers with the Denver Broncos, the New England Patriots, the Jacksonville Jags. Although the Jags aren't really up and coming because the Jags have kind of been high and low. But for Josh Allen, he's presumably, we assume, he's got his guy at head coach. So Sean McDermott, former Bills coach, longtime Bills coach, I should say, for many years, not the coach anymore. He was let go in the offseason after the Bills were eliminated, and replacing him was Bills offensive coordinator Joe Brady. So the Bills double down on their offensive coordinator and their offense with Josh Allen by naming the OC to be the head coach. Presumably, again, Allen has his guy. This is his dude. He likes this guy. This guy has been around the block. Um, Joe Brady really, I think most people would recognize him from being on the LSU coaching staff in the 2019-2020 season, the year they won the national championship with Joe Burrow. He was the wide receivers coach. Um, and I'll talk about Joe Brady a little bit more in another season preview. I don't want to make this all Joe Brady, but it's a lot of Josh Allen. Like Josh Allen is going to be the guy this year. This I feel like Josh Allen is the chalk favorite to win MVP. Again, he's got his coach with him. He's got arguably the best wide receiver that he's had since he's been in the NFL with DJ Moore coming over from Chicago. The offense itself looks great. Uh, Running backs, tight ends, receivers, like the Bills look to be. I don't want to. They're not a lock because it's such a wide open, you know, tough conference. But this feels like a year where something needs to happen for the Bills. Where obviously last season was such a disappointing ending. I think they were all burnt out by the end. You know, Allen had like 5 turnovers. If he doesn't have, if one of those turnovers goes the Bills' way, we're talking about a completely different situation in the AFC Championship game with the Bills and the Patriots. But I don't know. It just feels like this is the big like must win. The Bills are putting all their chips on the table to win this year, or to at least grow and move forward, to progress. Like they have been to the AFC Championship game a couple times. They've lost to the Chiefs in Kansas City in both games. This just feels like a year for Josh Allen and the Bills to take another step. And I think that's maybe not getting talked about enough. I don't know. I don't know how the people feel about the Bills. Like, they are a really good team. They should win at least 10, maybe 12 games this year. Um, like if Josh Allen is playing like an MVP, like we all think he can, like we all know he's capable of playing like an MVP, then this is a tough team to go up against. This is probably the number one seed in the AFC, but if for whatever reason Allen has a poor season, or he doesn't mesh well with Joe Brady, or the running backs get healthy, the O line doesn't stay healthy, whatever, for whatever reason, if it doesn't go well for the Bills, I think there's a lot more questions being asked, and I think there's a lot more issues coming up here. But if it all works out, then great. If not, then there's going to be some problems for Buffalo and Josh Allen maybe in the future. Not that I think the Bills are going to get rid of Josh Allen. I feel like you'd be foolish to trade or get rid of or let go of Josh Allen. It's just more organizationally, where do the Bills think they are? How do they get better? Because they made playing moves this offseason thinking they'd be better, but who knows? Who's to say? So, along similar lines, similar but different lines, I have Caleb Williams slash Ben Johnson and the Chicago Bears in, I guess, players and teams that I think will impact the 2026 season the most. Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson had a tremendous season last year together. They had a bit of a slow start, and then they figured it out, and then they got it to work. They went on a really good run. Now, granted, I think the Bears played a lot of easier opponents last year. I don't know how many of their actual wins in the regular season last year came against playoff teams, but they won the division. They have expectations. There are, you know, real hopes that Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson can be the duo that leads the Bears back to the NFC Championship, maybe to a Super Bowl. Who knows? You know, they got major wins over Philly and Green Bay, and that felt like that pushed them, to from being just kind of this mid-tier team to, okay, we need to start taking these guys seriously. They were fairly active in the off season. They got Kobe Bryant, who unfortunately is going to be injured, and I think he's missing about the first half of the season. They got Khalif Raymond, who I'm excited to see how he meshes with the offense as maybe a second, third receiver. They got Garrett Bradbury at I believe he's going to be the new center. Um, they were fairly active. They did what good teams or supposedly good teams do, and that's, I think, important. They think they can compete. They think they can go up head to head with the Rams, with the Seahawks, with uh, the Packers again, the Eagles. Like I think they're legit, and I'm curious to see if they are. Because if they aren't, like if they're back to being 7-10 or whatever, like if they miss the playoffs and things go poorly, now maybe we're not as good as we think we are. But I think at least with the Bears, they have the head coach and the quarterback. That is so important to have. If you have two things, if you have those two things that you both trust and believe, and you're counting on, like you think this is the duo, then you run with it. You basically hit the accelerator and you do whatever it takes to win with those guys. Um, obviously losing DJ Moore hurts, but they think with the receiving core that they have, with Rome Odunze, Luther Burden, now with Khalif Raymond, they like their tight ends too. They have Colston Loveland, Cole Kmet. Um, the running back group that they have, I actually like with Swift and Manungai. Like, I think the Bears can be a serious contender. I think they can be a legit team. And I think if they do, what we think they can do, and that's beat, win 10, same with the Bills, win 10 games, maybe win 12 games, win the division again. Ben Johnson scheming up all the crazy stuff on offense. Caleb Williams is having, 300-yard, two touchdown, three touchdown performances each week. He's not turning the ball over. Then the Bears are going to be a tough out for anybody in the NFL, not just the NFC North, not just the NFC, anybody. So I think I will say I'm drinking some of the Bears Kool-Aid. Like I think these guys can be serious Super Bowl contenders. It's why I put them on this list. It's why I think they are legit, because I think they have a quarterback and a head coach they like. They have uh, a surrounding cast, at least on offense, that they think they like. Their defense is not bad. I think that's where more of the questions are at, like linebacker, secondary. They thought with Kobe Bryant they were going to alleviate some of that pressure at cornerback. Now Bryant's out for a little bit. I don't know how that's going to work or how that's going to last, but the Bears at least like where they're at and they double down on it. So if it all goes well, if it all goes to plan, watch out for the Chicago Bears. These guys with Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson, they're going to be one of, if not the most impactful team in the NFL this upcoming season. Maybe the most impactful NFC team. In I like the thing with the Bears is that they feel like they could be so hit and miss. Like they feel like they could be either the one seed this year in a way of, if everybody's healthy and they're playing well enough, they could be the one seed. They could also, it also feels like they could miss the playoffs. They are in such a tough division. Um, I guess that would also require the Vikings to maybe steal a game or two, depending on how you feel about the Vikings. But like the Bears, I feel like are going to be such an impactful, fun, exciting team that will have a lot of say in how this season goes. That is how I feel about the Chicago Bears and how they're built for this season. Another team, kind of in the top tier, that I think will impact the season. A player and a team, I'll say, is Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles. How does Hurts and the rest of his team bounce back after a disappointing season? yes, they moved on from AJ Brown. Um, I've talked about it before, and I'm going to keep talking about it again. They don't have Jeff Stoutland as their offensive line coach, and that seems to be a big piece in where the Eagles are at. It seems like mentally, vibes wise, like from a locker room perspective, like this by all accounts seems like a guy that people loved, and now he's gone. I don't know how bad it was this past season or how bad things have been under Nick Sirianni. They're on to their fifth OC in 5 seasons. That's how crazy the Eagles have been. They have a trip to London with no bye on either side of that trip, before or after, no bye. And they have a fairly tough end of season schedule. So week 14, they host Indianapolis on December 13th. Week 15, they host Seattle December 19th. That's on a Saturday. So they get a short week against the defending Super Bowl champions. Week 16, they host Houston. So they have 3 home games in a row, all with short weeks after one another. So in the span of this, between like December 13th to December 24th, so 3 games in 11 days for the Eagles, because December 24th, Christmas Eve, that's on a Thursday this year. So they go from playing from a Sunday to a Saturday to a Thursday. Now they're all at home, but they're all again like they get to play the Seahawks, defending Super Bowl champions, and then the Houston Texans. Really good defense. That's a defense that can mess with that offense. Week 17, after the Thursday night game against Houston. Week 17, they go across the country to San Francisco to play the 49ers in Sunday Night Football. I'm starting to think the Niners maybe aren't as good as we think they are this year, but that's still a tough matchup. Going to San Francisco, Sunday Night Football, not easy. And then week 18, they go to the Meadowlands and play the Giants on either January 9th or 10th. So another potential short week. Like that's not an easy end of the season schedule. I understand that, there's 3 straight home games in December for you, but that's 3 games in 11 nights versus Indy, versus Seattle, versus Houston, each with a shorter week than the last. And then having to go to cross country to play San Fran, and then having to go play the Giants in the Meadowlands. Listen, I just think with Hurts, you know, I like Hurts. I think he's a good quarterback. It might just be time to break up with the Eagles. You know what I mean? Like I think it's just time to just move on and go somewhere else. I don't know what Hurts' contract situation is. I think it might be time to see what other options there are. I think the grass might be greener on the other side for Jalen Hurts. Is honestly how I feel. He did have a career high in passing touchdowns last year. He had 25 passing touchdowns. But I just think that the grass has to be greener on the other side. That he either can't keep doing this with Nick Sirianni. Um, I'm sure the pressure of being doing this again, like having a like it's the meme where it's like, we're so back, it's so over, we're so back, like it's like we're so back and it's so over, and like doing that for several years and having several versions of that in Philadelphia, it has to be exhausting on the brain. Like that has to be mentally draining. Now, if I was the Eagles, I would have fired Nick Sirianni a long time ago. I don't think Nick Sirianni is the right guy for the Eagles. I know they won a Super Bowl with him, but I just don't think. I mean, they went to another. I just don't think he's the best coach, to be perfectly honest. But if they're going to stick with Sirianni, I gotta assume that Jalen Hurts is maybe keen on going somewhere else. That's my hot take. You know, it's why if the Eagles can make all this work, make this all, you know, happen and exist, coexist with one another. Listen, they can win this division. They can be I dare to say a Super Bowl contender because I don't know how good the defense is, but they can be competitive. They can be a tough team to go up against. But if this doesn't work, if this falls apart mid-season, damn, there's a lot of, you know, almost scheduled wins for teams that are just like, yeah, we just know that we're gonna outwork them, we're gonna outmuscle them, we're gonna beat them, and that would be a huge swing for like again, Indianapolis, Seattle, Houston, San Francisco, maybe even the Giants, all those teams that think they maybe have playoff aspirations or more this year, having free wins at the end of the year in December, in the hardest part of the year, that's huge. That is big, and that's why I think Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles are a team for different reasons than the Bears and Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson and you know Josh Allen and the Bills. The Eagles are going to be an impactful team this year. I think they're a team that's going to define this season. Maybe not in the right ways. Maybe not in the most positive ways. That's how I see uh things going for the Eagles. Uh, let's move on to another team. I talked about this guy last week. We're probably going to keep talking about this guy again. Um, I'll say Miles Garrett and the LA Rams. I talked about how he got traded. Him in LA. Um, I didn't really discuss his fit. So Garrett is obviously more of an outside pass rusher. Like he's gonna line up wider than most tight ends. That's his game. And he's probably gonna stay there about 80% of the time. That's what the numbers look like in Cleveland. That's what I think you'll see under McVay in LA is he's gonna just play outside. He's gonna play wider than a tight end. He's just gonna be a pure edge rusher 80% of the time. Now there are times where they could bump him inside, but if we're thinking Aaron Donald's coming back, you don't need to really do that. Aaron Donald could be on the interior. Um, and assuming that Garrett is healthy and assuming that Darnold is healthy, um, yeah, the Rams are absolutely going to be a team that's going to impact and you know be a critical watch in 2026 without a doubt. Having that big of a boost on defense is huge. That's big for the program. That is massive for the Rams. And it's also going to be intriguing to see how San Francisco, Seattle, Green Bay, like all these teams that are playing the Rams, how they defend against Miles Garrett, how they plan for him. So I think the Rams and Miles Garrett are definitely going to be a player and a team that's going to impact this season. I don't think we need to go into it too much just because it's not that like it's pretty obvious. Like I don't think we need to go in depth about it. But yeah, obviously Miles. I had to mention. I had to bring it out. I had to discuss it really. Um, Next thing I want to discuss. This is kind of interesting. I'm really hitting NFC teams here, but I want to discuss a little bit about Jeremiah Love and the Arizona Cardinals because I think they're they're again not going to impact the NFL in a, let's say, positive way this year. If you've seen clips from Arizona at training camp so far, it's no bueno. There's a lot of work that needs to be done for the Cardinals to be somewhat relevant this year. But I think of the poor teams or the teams we don't think are going to be good this year. There's Arizona, there's Miami, there's the Jets, there's mm, the Dolphins. Like I think there's four teams that we think are gonna, try and tank for Arch Manning. And nobody's obviously tanking. Like nobody's actually like the players aren't at least. The teams might, but nobody's actually trying to tank for Arch Manning. But in the world of the Arizona Cardinals, they drafted Jeremiah Love third overall. They signed him to a huge contract. I think it's 4 years, 54 million guaranteed. Like that's a huge deal to give any running back, to give any free agent guy, much less a guy who has no NFL experience, who got over 200 touches with Notre Dame last year. Like he needs to get at least that with Arizona to just hit the usage efficiency. Like they just need to get him the ball as many times as they can to make the contract worthwhile. And should it go poorly? Like, should this all go bad for Love and Arizona this year? And like, things look terrible, then the Cardinals are going to be drafted first overall and they're going to get their quarterback because this year they're going to be starting Jacoby Brissett and Carson Beck and whoever the hell else they have on their team. Like it, that's how I see them impacting the season of like who the fastest to the bottom first. And I think Arizona is leading that right now because they have a coach I really don't love in Mike LaFleur, who is Matt LaFleur's brother, who was under Sean McVay. Who again, I don't think he was Arizona's first choice as a coach this year, but when they missed out on other guys, they took him. And yeah, frankly, this team is going to be bad this year. This team is going to be no bueno. Jeremiah Love might be the only positive. Maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. Those are the only two guys who I'm really looking forward to on the Cardinals offense. Like, you can tell me Trey McBride, you can say James Conner, I guess, but like I don't even know. I don't think Arizona knows what they are. I don't know what they are. I don't know. I'm not sold on the Cardinals. I think they're going to be picking last this year. Not to jump ahead to predictions, but Jeremiah Love and the Arizona Cardinals are definitely going to impact this NFL season, but in a terrible way that allows them to draft first overall this year. That's how I see that playing out for them. And then let's move over to I guess the Cardinals were in the NFC Central at one time. Let's move over to another former NFL or NFC Central team. I'm gonna say Aiden Hutchinson and the Detroit Lions are a team I think will impact this season. I think the Lions, you can make an argument for a couple different guys. You could say Jared Goff, obviously quarterback. You could say Jahmyr Gibbs, running back. They moved off David Montgomery in the offseason, so now this is really becoming Gibbs's team. But I'm going with Aiden Hutchinson because the Lions defense was not great. They gave up, I think, a lot of points. Like they struggled quite a bit keeping people out of the end zone. Although Hutchinson last year had several career highs. Like I think he had career high sacks, tackles, played the most amount of games. If you're looking for an easy worst to first team, like there's been a team I think the last every year for the last 10 multiple years even that goes from finishing last in their division to winning their division. I think the Lions could be that team. Did they finish last year? No, the Vikings surely finished last. Anyways, the Lions are not were not great last year by the end of it. They were 9-8. I think they kind of got burnt out. They kind of were done with it. But I think if Aiden Hutchinson shows up, kicks ass, uh, chews bubblegum is all out of bubblegum, this guy is gonna wreak havoc on the rest of the NFL. And I hope that it works out for the Lions because I still think the Lions are still contenders. Like I think people are sleeping on the Lions a little bit. Obviously, they've had to make some changes. They've had to move some guys. They don't have Khalif Raymond anymore. Isaac Teslay. I don't know how you say his last name. He's now going to be the third receiver for them. They've had issues at center. Like they are a team that's gone through some organizational changes. And I'm sure there's teams and people out there who think that Dan Campbell and the guys have missed their window, which maybe it's possible. Um, you have such a short window for success in the NFL that it can come and go in a day. Absolutely. I am optimistic that Hutchinson is still one of the best pass rushers, one of the toughest guys to stop in the NFL. And I think that will make the Lions a threat once again to win the NFC North. Because if it's, just Hutchinson kicking ass and the offense doesn't do well, that's a problem because the Lions' identity is their offense, and they rely probably more than they'd like to, but they do rely, it seems like, quite a bit on guys like Aiden Hutchinson and some of the other defensive guys to maybe not the defensive. I think the Lions defense does not play as well as a unit as the offense does, which is why they rely more on the individual performances. And if Aiden Hutchinson has a kick-ass individual performance, he should be right up there with like defensive play of the year or sack leader. I know Miles Garrett is in the same conference as him now. That's I get that. But Hutchinson is a guy who I love. I'm curious to see how he does this year. Uh, can he still create havoc, you know, get to the quarterback, make plays, and just be the impactful guy that we think he is and that this Lions team can be. That's what I'm really curious to see from Hutch and the Lions this year. All right. Finally, I guess my seventh player slash team that I think will impact the 2026 season. I'm gonna throw Kenneth Walker in the Kansas City Chiefs. Like if K9 can actually bring a serious run game back to the Chiefs, what does that do for them? Ideally, it takes pressure off Patrick Mahomes and Justin Fields, whoever the other quarterbacks will be for the Chiefs this year, assuming that Mahomes doesn't start the year on the field. Like, if he can alleviate some of the pressure on the quarterbacks and actually provide a real run game for the Chiefs, that's huge. That is gonna change a lot of people's opinions on the Chiefs quickly. Now, I will say he is not the best pass blocker. That's not totally his game. You kind of saw that near the end with Seattle. Um, it was becoming noticeable. So you have to get him to run and catch the ball well, which is kind of why you got the guy in. You're not bringing the guy in the pass block, but that's just his weakness. So you kind of have to scheme and plan an offense around him doing what he does best, which is running the ball and catching the ball. You know, I will say the Chiefs are not usually, I should say the Chiefs. Andy Reid has never been a huge uh running the football kind of guy. And I can talk about Andy Reid later on, but they've never been a huge he's never been a huge running the football coach. He is a pass first, run second coach. Like you go look at how many times his teams have finished 10th in rushing attempts in a season. I think it's maybe once, maybe twice. Once for sure. And he's coached for 20 some odd years, but he's never been a running, the ball kind of coach. That's just not his MO. I think this year, if Ken Walker can be healthy, useful, um, schemed properly, Ken Walker is going to have a massive impact on the Chiefs, and that in turn is going to have a massive impact in the NFL this season. So I'm very excited to see how Ken Walker does in Kansas City under Andy Reid with Mahomes at quarterback if he can stay healthy. I will say Ken Walker's big thing is how fast he is. He's lost the gear, I think, since he got into the league. But that's like any running back. When you've taken so many hits, when you've had so many touches, when you've had injuries like Ken Walker has had, and he's had some serious injuries, yeah, it's fair to say that, you probably have lost the gear. You've lost a step since you entered the league. But he's still Ken Walker. Like he can still be an effective NFL running back, and I think Andy Reid can make it work with this guy. I think it also helps that they're bringing a guy in not only with just NFL experience, Super Bowl experience, but he's been doing this for a while. Like the Chiefs are not running out some rookie running back or some young face guy to be the starting running back. They're bringing in a guy who's been a starting NFL running back before on a different team, technically on a Super Bowl winning team. So do with that what you will. Um, I think he'll fit in well. I'm excited to see how well he does in Kansas City. Um, yeah, if it all goes well, watch for Kenneth Walker to be a real impactful guy with the Chiefs. and watch out for the Chiefs to be a real impactful team in the NFL. So, and then I'm just going to throw out a couple other teams situations that I'm interested in this season. Cam Ward in Tennessee. Tennessee made some changes this offseason. Robert Sala is now their new head coach, formerly the Jets head coach, most recently the Niners defensive coordinator. Brian Dable, formerly the Giants head coach, is the Titans offensive coordinator. Um, I actually liked Cam Ward last year. Like, go watch actually his tape against the Seahawks last year. Like, the Seahawks had a road game in Nashville against the Titans, and that game was a lot closer than it should have been. Like, you go watch some of the throws that Cam Ward made in that game, and Cam Ward looked really good. I'm not sure that Brian Dable is the guy that I want coaching up my second year quarterback, but who knows? Maybe it works. I'm a little skeptical. We'll just say I'm a little skeptical. And along similar lines, Tyler Shuck and the New Orleans Saints. I think Shuck can be a serious guy. It's gonna be year two with him and Kellen Moore as the head coach. You know, they re-signed Chris Olave. They drafted Jordan Tyson in the first round. He's a wide receiver from Arizona State. You know, they're giving him options. They added Travis Etienne, he running back from Jacksonville. Um, I think Kamara is. I don't want to say he's done, but he's getting pushed down the depth chart. It's from what it sounds like. Um, you know, I think the Saints last year they started really poorly. Again, go watch their game against Seattle and just how badly they were outcoached, outplayed, outworked, all that stuff last year in their game against Seattle. But it looked like down the stretch they kind of figured it out a little bit, or they had a better idea of who they are and who they wanted to be. I'm curious to see now in year two with Kellen Moore, Tyler Shuck, if they keep going with that, if they have more success. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that entirely means for the Saints. I think I think they're probably still a 6 or 7 win team. They're not a playoff team in my eyes. But I think what it's most important for the Saints this year is, do they have a guy who they really do think is the long-term answer at quarterback? Maybe Shook's just a bridge quarterback for the next guy. That's entirely possible. Um, you know, I don't know if it's harsh to say that he's like a Bryce Young type, where there's flashes of potential, but it's not as consistent as you want it to be. I'm not sure. I would have to ask a Saints fan who's watched them and seen them more than I have. But I think the Saints are going to be an interesting team, and if the Saints, as well as the Titans, if they have their franchise quarterbacks or their guys that they think they can, you know, build around for the next few years, that's huge. That is so critical, especially for both of those franchises. The Saints have been floundering trying to find a quarterback for years. The Titans kind of similarly, they had Tannehill and then they didn't, and they thought maybe Will Levis, but both of those teams were kind of all over the board and just need a guy that they can build around, and they can, again, this might sound old school and a bit cliche, but just a guy who they can like sell tickets and build a franchise and market around and get people excited to watch a Titans game or watch a Saints game. That's gonna be huge for New Orleans and Tennessee if they have long-term guys, if they have guys that they truly believe in and they think can be impactful players. So curious to see how that is. So that's my part two. Those are our 7 to 9 of the players and situations I think who are gonna impact the NFL season the most in 2026. I mean, I can obviously talk about Seattle, we can talk about San Fran, the all those teams, but I just think those teams are obvious, and I wanted to discuss some situations that maybe weren't as obvious, and uh maybe a little bit more impactful than just being a Super Bowl winner. Like, again, I'm a Seahawks fan, so I could talk about the Seahawks, but I think it's kind of obvious. Wow, the Super Bowl winner is going to impact the next season. Yeah, no shit, Ian. Yeah, like, thank you. So I hope you enjoyed that. that was part two of our 2026 NFL season preview. You can watch this video on our YouTube channel. Go subscribe. Any support is greatly appreciated. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We're going to be back again next week with our part three episode for our 2026 NFL season preview. I can't wait to talk to you guys then. Thank you very much for all your support. We will be back again next week, if not sooner. Thanks for all the support. Hope everybody is all doing well, especially if you're living on the West Coast or in the Midwest right now or in the prairies with all the smoke going on. Make sure to stay safe. Make sure to look after yourself. Help others if you can. And it's summertime. It's August. You know, just got to be safe and got to be careful, especially when you're going out in the woods or going out in the bush. So, just wanted to give that heads up, friendly reminder to people. But yeah, thank you again for listening, for watching. Thank you again for all your support. It's been great chatting. We'll be back again soon. Peace out.